name is Lexi, and welcome to my Deaf Newsflash. This is a social, commentary. I'm really only looking for on deaf issues. I only accept deaf opinions. In regards to other, social issues here, with respect to those issues, I am open, to conversation on that with my commentary. But other than that, if it's deaf related, then only deaf people should be, talking about it. And so I am deaf. I am hard of hearing. I prefer to identify more as deaf whenever I'm inside of hearing spaces, because hearing people, they just don't give you the same access when you say hard of hearing. They're like, okay, you can talk, you're hard of hearing, so you hear some, so you know what I'm saying. Today I am mostly gonna be using English because it's gonna be a bit easier to caption the video that way. But I can sign some. You get hearing fatigue. Speak doesn't mean you can hear. You get hearing fatigue. You have language deprivation. Things that come into play. I literally have sensorineural deafness with decreased speech understanding. So we're going to be talking about learning anything sign related only from deaf people. I'm going to be doing a little intermixing of some, a little bit of drama that unfolded. I'm just going to say it's drama unfolded on TikTok, but with regards to some social commentary on that. And then I'm going to do a little bit of a reaction to the video that upset me, as well as show my sources. So there are sources for everything I am discussing. I'm not going to go read every single source because it's a lot of material to get through. And I do have videos already on me basically going through most of this material. What we're going to talk about is a creator named MernieAnne. Now, they do use the pronouns she, they, so I'm going to be kind of throwing a little bit of both of those in for her, I believe, if that is appropriate. And if I'm to be corrected on that, please somebody correct me, and I do apologize if that is the incorrect way to use, the she, they pronouns with respect to as they're displayed on their TikTok bio. So they do have in her captions, none of us will be free until all of us are free. And in respect to how they treated me in the community, I felt they cultivated on the profile, and with regards to the video they did, I kind of feel like, maybe I wish they would take their own bio with a bit more, seriousness. Alright, so with regards to the idea that an algorithm can't listen or read sign language, I guess if you want to be a smart ass, technically you're right, it doesn't listen to it, but it can read it. Alright, now think of sign language gloves, for example. Think of the Xbox Kinect, for example. We know the technology exists already. And then here's also, if you go to on Instagram, go sign.ai. I forgot to do a slide to this. But it's gosign.ai on Instagram is their profile, and it's also their website, www.gosign.ai. It's a multiplayer mobile app game in sign language, and you can play with your friends and win prizes from anywhere in the world. Now, they do have, if you go into their reels, they talk about artificial intelligence and using stable diffusion in regards to AI and technology. Camera on their TikTok, and you can learn more about how sign language is integrated in with all of that. I said TikTok, but I'm on their Instagram profile. I'm assuming they have a TikTok, but I actually didn't look into if they have a TikTok, but they definitely have an Instagram profile. That's what I'm looking at. I'm so used to thinking about TikTok, I'm addicted to TikTok. But anywho, they've got a website where you can play the game there. And then they have an app that's available on the App Store. I'm also assuming perhaps one will eventually come out on Android as well and everything like that. So, you know, there's GoSign.ai. And then in the Life Print Facebook group, if you join that, it's a group for Facebook. It's a Facebook group for Life Print University or ASL University. Life Print Sign Language that's taught by Bill Vicars. He's got a website for it, a YouTube channel. If you go check that shit out, you'll see he talks a bit about how he's worked with artificial intelligence to communicate and generate some sign language. So the technology has proven to exist out there in terms of AI to recognize sign language. Now, we could say there is some truth to what they're saying if you want to say maybe they're exaggerating, or maybe they're just like not aware of the full truth, or maybe they're just referring to the fact that it's not necessarily like as good as speech, you know, with speech and artificial intelligence, and it's not mainstreamed yet. So, but it took forever. Like speech, automatic captions took forever for us to get mainstreamed on platforms, you know, but didn't always exist on social media platforms. How to fight for that. And I honestly believe sign language is going to develop and come the same way. And automatic captions for speech, they still suck now, but they used to suck even more. We call it captions. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, like it's always been problematic. It still does suck, you know, and sign language has a bit further of a way to go, but the technology exists. It's out there, it's developing, and it's improving. And I just think it's ignorant to act like it's not there. Like it's fine to talk about the improvements that need to be made and maybe to joke about it not existing perhaps because it sucks, but I mean it's there, it's improving, and it's actually like you know, it's the more time goes, the more it improves. And so yeah. But here's my thing. If you are hearing, how have you been summoned when sign language is the topic? Doesn't matter, you know, if you are a native signer as a hearing person, that is the only credence I get. Or if you are a person with a disability who utilizes sign language, you know, that I get. Besides that, if you're hearing and you don't rely on sign language in terms of needing access for yourself, it's cultural appropriation. And the hearing people who are culturally native deaf signers or with other disabilities that use sign language for their normal communication are a very small percentage. It's mostly a deaf cultural thing. The origin of sign language in the United States, as the colonized United States, you know, not Native American Sign Language, which is still in history. The ASL here, it's all based on, you know, the history tied into deaf culture, and the hearing cultural division is tied into colonialism as well. That's its own whole history. So I don't know. I just feel like if a man, you know, if I was talking about my period, or if I was talking about abortion rights, and a man said, I have been summoned, you know, a cis man, perhaps, I should say cis man, you know, but I'm talking about cis men who are not impacted by the abortion ban to their bodies, were to make a video saying, I have been summoned when the abortion ban comes up, I really wouldn't trust them. Because what gives you the right to feel like you are summoned to speak on something in which I am oppressed for, that you do not experience, that you will never have to worry about impacting your physical body? You know what I'm saying? And your relationships to us don't mean you experience what we experience. Okay, so I do think, you know, I wasn't happy with the point he made, so I did not go look at his video because I just felt like what was stitched was an inaccuracy or a misrepresentation of the truth. And so I just didn't feel the need to go see any other misinformation that might trigger me, or what I perceive to not be accurate. So, in regards to being a sign language interpreter, if you're not deaf, or you are not, as I discussed again, a person who relies on sign language for your own access, or a hearing person who is a culturally native signer, you don't have an understanding or cultural representation to speak on sign language. And I have sources on this too, like to be considered, I believe this my source considers an experienced signer 10 years and a novice signer less than that. Novice signers typically have, and these are ranges too, typically have an accuracy rate between like a 30 and a 60%, and expert signers only go up to about 80% at about 10 years. You know, it takes a long time to become a good signer. But yeah, so I don't know. We need sign language interpretation. We're grateful for that. I'm grateful for that. And we're not a monolith. So my speaking is from my own perspective. I know of other people who feel the same way I do, but even so, I feel like if one deaf person feels a certain way about their deafness, hearing people should respect that. Because then that's how we don't become a statistic. If you just listen to one of us to begin with, we don't have to become a statistic. Versus if you wait for us to become a statistic, you're just saying, okay, well, I have to make sure more of you are harmed for something before I care about it. And to me, that's just oppression. And again, we do need interpretation and appreciate that, you know. Okay, but it's not up to you to decide what is or isn't access to us. I don't know how to sign algorithm, to be honest, but you know what? That's why I don't teach sign or try to represent myself as a stronger, you know, like signer than I am. Like, you have to know, like, when you know enough to communicate versus teach. And they know enough to communicate but not teach. Now, there's not much technically, like, there's a few things that I could nitpick on about their sign, but there's not much. It's not like you're, you know, wrong for communication, but my problem is mostly right now the facial expressions, the cultural appropriation, and some of the inaccuracies in terms of teaching deaf access and the information like that is being shared upsets me. And I would use some different signs with some of what they're using. And with deaf people, you also get taught, and this is just going to be for evidence purposes, that they are trying to teach sign language. And, you know, deaf people would be teaching you variations, and it's also really harmful for, you see how they are speaking while they are teaching. That is harmful for you to learn sign language because you need to be learning voice off, because sign language use different neural pathways. And you're not giving those pathways. They take years to form. If you're learning with sound on, you're not forming those pathways correctly the way you should. So this is also a detriment. And the fact that they're not teaching or explaining the variations or how the hand movements or sentence structure or facial expressions or giving any form of context for communication can lead to a lot of errors. And right here, they're using the food handshake 4 times. But it's important to know the difference between a noun and a verb. Okay, so you're going to go 1 time if it's a verb and twice if it's a noun. I'm not qualified to teach sign. I don't teach sign. I know some sign. I, you know, sign because I'm deaf, and it's the most, you know, like the best language for me to have with communication. But whatever. Okay, just because, you know, I speak English doesn't mean I should be teaching English. I wouldn't teach English. And there's a difference too between, you know, telling someone in real life like how to say something versus like you know, making or building like a platform from that. And so you wouldn't sign 4 times unless you're like trying to eat a lot of food, to my knowledge. And with water, I would sign more down the chin personally. But you know, you want to do facial expressions are everything. So this is, and they're not teaching variations. And this help is a directional verb. They're not discussing that. The way they're signing is I help you. You just want to sign help in general, you're going to go up. But whatever. Like, I'm not trying to teach. I'm just trying to correct what I perceive as potential misinformation or potential not explaining the potential thing. Because, all right, and I perceive that sign to mean more of none, nothing, or no one. And that could be like Laka, but like, you know, I guess that's a translation. But, you know, I just feel like we have different understandings of these like ideas, you know? And I'm just like not happy with how they get to build clout off like our culture while we are oppressed for that, you know? And I don't feel like they can represent us the right way. And that's my opinion. I know some people agree with me, some don't, but you know, you can have your own ideas over there. So I'm just proving that they are trying to teach sign language from my perspective. Okay, so this is proof to me like that, you know, how I feel that they think they can speak over and for deaf people. And that's why I'm like just not happy with this video. Like, I just feel like you think this could be useful. That's like a cis man telling me what is useful for my own period. You know, I don't know. But you're wrong. And I don't know why you think your opinion matters about deafness, because you have no lived experience. You have nothing relevant to say about what it means to need deaf access. Your hearing. Like, you don't know. So what? Why are you trying to show like misrepresentation of misinformation when there are deaf people who you could platform instead? Why not, you know, collab with an actual deaf person? That's what I want to know. And it bothers me that hearing people think that they should be making videos about what they think about deafness. That's bias. Like, let us speak for ourselves. Now, with these sentences, they use like a few sentences with 3 words. And for me, it's just an example of linguistic, like simplification and deprivation. And I just, and kind of like, because they're kind of like implying that maybe this is like all you need to know to communicate about like what's happening, but it's not. Like, that's not access. If you just captioned your content, you know, and you change your content that might be flagged by the algorithm, that could help us, you know, like more than like anything that's happening here, which is cultural like appropriation. And it's discrimination, it's hearsplaining, ableism, it's a bunch of things. So, yeah, it just kind of bothers me, like what they do with these sentences, because it does not help deaf access. If you want to interpret, if it's like something, really, we just want captions. If it's something you can caption, that's what we need, because it's important for deaf people to be given this space. But if you want to show your own journey with sign language, that's different. However, coming off as an authority on it, placing yourself as someone trying to act like you have the experience to be an authority or a spokesperson for this is wrong. Stick to your own journey. Don't speak for deaf people because you don't know. Free Palestine, though. So whenever I first basically reached out to her, like I basically was like, I appreciate you for interpreting. We need interpretation, and I hope you keep interpreting. It's really important to stick to communicating with deaf people and promoting deaf people. And I saw her like a comment that was telling me that I was gatekeeping, and that really just pissed me off that she liked that comment. And so I told her, I had hope for you, but now I don't. And I tried to remain polite. Well, but I feel you're anti-deaf is basically what I was saying. And I just felt like they were very patronizing, and they were acting like they had some sort of equal authority or knowledge on this material than me, a deaf person, which is just extremely harmful. And so I also have a bunch of sources that are already linked on different videos on my YouTube that I've talked about before for this video. And then I'm also got more material too that I'm going to address. I'm not going to go into the details of every single thing that I'm showing the sources for, but because I have other videos that I did that already, I literally read this shit. So if you want to know more about any of the sources I have, let me know, and I'm then going to link you to those specific videos. But to sum it up, basically, way back up to 1000 BC, laws were passed, against deaf people to harm us in deaf society, banning us from access to things like property and things like that. And then even like Plato and Socrates and Aristotle were talking about how deaf people were too stupid to reason and things like that. Well, then fast forward to Alexander Graham Bell. Alexander Graham Bell literally he had a deaf mother and a deaf wife, alright? And he tokenized the hell out of them, okay? And in 1880, at the Milan Conference, he spoke for 3 days, while deaf people were only given 3 hours to speak. And he basically made it so that sign language was banned in the United States, and actually was banned around the world. In signing, deaf teachers were fired. Many people were fired. And so from this, they still have been trying to eliminate sign language, and that's actually shown in more contemporary legal issues today, which we'll have to get into on a different video, because this one's already going to be pretty long. But basically, in 1883, he published his Memoir upon the formation of a deaf variety of the human race. And I do have to have this title in front of me to say it because it's so long, so fucking ridiculous. Every time I try to say it off the top of my head, I get it jumbled up, and I'll be like, variety, deaf, formation, race, human, I don't know, because it's just such a stupid ass long title. So if I do that when I'm talking about it, this is what I'm talking about, alright? So basically, he was trying to identify what deaf people used to succeed in order to eliminate it, in order to harm deaf people. and he wanted to assimilate deaf people into hearing society. He thought deaf people were weak in society, and he thought we were like a calamity to the world, and he wanted to stop us from marrying or producing kids. And he was even like researching and realizing that deaf people had a lot of common ancestors, and deafness could be genetic. And then he was realizing that even hearing people could produce deaf kids if they had deafness in their family heritage, you know, like deaf people being genetic wasn't even only just the deaf people, but he thought deaf people shouldn't get married because we didn't want us to have more deaf people or form a deaf society. And then there were also laws passed to have deaf people and all people with disabilities forcibly sterilized, and that's actually still legal in 31 states today. And yeah, man, it's pretty fucked up. So it's all based on the eugenics movement, and the medical perception of deafness is all based from that, or perceived as a defect. And we have a very high unemployment rate. If we get married, we could lose our disability, because they think that, you know, we're like a responsibility of our partner or whatever. And it's just harmful. Like, you know, deaf people and all people with disabilities experience discrimination. We're paid below minimum wage, you know. And there's a big wage gap between people with disabilities and deaf people. And deafness, we don't see ourselves as disabled, most of us, but we do have laws that are protected as labeled socially as disabled. So we do have that deafness and disability pride. But the unemployment rate for people without disabilities is 3.5%, and for people with disabilities is 7.3%. So it's like over double. And you know, deaf people and all people with disabilities were in poverty. We have experienced a lot of disparity in social life. And we also experience more crime and more violence. And so to that end, you know, whenever I perceive people as upholding an unsafe space for deaf people or any people with disability, I perceive them as, you know, perpetuating violence against us. And there's not really it's hard to get like research on, you know, any statistics regarding disability or deafness, but lawsuits are kind of like the closest thing we have to really measure it. But between 1992 and 2011, only 23.4% of cases are closed with merit, while 76.6% of cases are closed without merit. So, you know, deaf people and people with disabilities make between like 12-15% of the United States population. So over 85% of the United States population is not deaf or disabled. And so when you consider that, but we're only believed about 20% of the time, it's really messed up, you know what I'm saying? Because we're not really truly judged by a jury of our peers. And who are people that don't experience the discrimination we face to decide what is or isn't that discrimination? Like, all I'm saying is, for every case of discrimination, I think you should only be allowed to have any legal input on it if you actually experience that form of oppression yourself. And that's my own opinion. You know what I'm saying? So there was like a dark legal ages after sign language was banned and all of these genocidal things were put into place to try and off us. There was a dark legal ages where there was literally like 2 lawyers for several years, for like a few decades, I think. And it wasn't until the 504 section protest for the Rehab Act of 1973 that people with disabilities and deaf people actually began getting legal rights, and that was thanks to the Black Panthers protesting. And Brad Lomax actually, led that protest. And the difference also between the 1990 and 2008 ADA Act was it basically used to say, like, okay, if we can prove that, or if you can't prove you had a disability or whatever, they could just say, or if you didn't prove it, they could say, like, or even if you did prove it, I think they could still say that they didn't believe that you had a disability before in 1990. But then in 2008, they made a law saying if they can prove it, you can't deny them access. So that's like a thing with that major update. So a lot of people, even if they kind of had rights under 1990 Act, they really didn't have rights until like 2008. And that's still loopholes for interpretation. So Alexander Graham Bell basically straight up said that the production of a defective race of human beings would be a great calamity to the world, and will examine carefully the causes that lead to the intermarriage of the deaf with the object of applying a remedy. Oh, and before that, he said those who believe as I do. What the fuck? Like, what? Yeah, so he was like super proud to be part of the eugenics movement too. Like, he was like top gun in one of the congresses they had in the eugenics movement. He won like an award and stuff. And then he really gaslit deaf people, because after all of this, he literally said in 1891, now mind you, the Memoir upon the formation of a deaf variety of human rights was written in 1883. And instead of apologizing for that, he gaslit the fuck out of deaf people. And I've been trying not to read these sources because I've already done like material on this, but this one pisses me off so much, we're gonna read it. So he said, you yourselves are a part of a great world of hearing and speaking people. Bitch, I can't hear. Just because I'm hard of hearing doesn't mean I know what the fuck you're saying. And just because I was forced to speak, you know what I'm saying? Okay, you are not a race distinct and apart. Then why the fuck did you write that memoir upon the formation of a deaf variety of the human race, dipshit? And this is for educational purposes only. You can't bully a dead man, okay? So this is not bullying or harassment. This man is dead. Wait, I'm gonna get this TikTok censored. This man is no longer living. May he rest in hell. Fuck you, bitch. I'm coming for you in the afterlife. Fuck you. See you in hell. Anyhow, you are not a race distinct and apart. Fuck you. And you must fulfill the duties of life and make your ways to honorable positions among the hearing and speaking people. This is not forced cultural assimilation. He's still preaching. And he says, I know that an idea has gone forth and is very generally believed in by the deaf in this country that I want to prevent you from marrying as you choose. Gee, I wonder why we think that. And I have tried to pass a law to interfere with your marriages, but my friends, it's not true. Oh really, asshole. That is the gaslighting. Because if you go Google right now and read Memoir upon a variety of deformation variety race. God, I told y'all this was gonna happen. Google that. You'll see what the fuck I'm talking about. Okay. And then he says, blah blah blah. And then at the end of this, he says, it's not for me to blame you for marrying to suit yourselves, for you all know that I myself, the son of a deaf mother, have married a deaf wife. So his response to allegations of oralism and discrimination and autism and the genocide and the eugenics was, I didn't do that. I got a deaf mom and a deaf wife. Let me tokenize these people. What the hell? So whenever people tokenize their deaf relationship, I just think, what in the Alexander Graham Bell are you saying? Like, why? It's often given advice to parents that they shouldn't even sign for their kids. And so there's this abstract from the Development of Deaf Identity and Ethnographic Study, and it's in the Journal of Deaf Studies and Deaf Education, and there's a line that really hits home with me, and it says, the findings suggest that deaf identity is not a static concept, but a complex, ongoing quest for belonging, a quest that is bound up with the acceptance of being deaf while finding one's voice in a hearing-dominant society. And let that sink in. You know what I'm saying? Read it again if you need to. Pause and read it again if you need to. Because this is part of why I feel like this really explained why I was so triggered. This is our deaf journey. You're not our voice. We're trying to find our own voice. So there is evidence, that members of the deaf ASL community, we consider ourselves a cultural and linguistic minority group. Some people don't believe me when I say we have deaf culture, but there is not specific techniques for doing field work in deaf communities, which goes back to when I said there's not much research on this. But I also feel like, like with this interpreter, like people will learn some things about deafness or sign language and then think, okay, they know everything. Like, wait a minute, only deaf people should be representatives or speaking on it because we are still oppressed by hearing people. So there's a few reasons why hearing people should teaching American Sign Language, even if it's one video, can be perceived as disrespectful to the deaf community. So assuming hearing people can teach ASL better than deaf people, reinforcing the notion of the deaf community as a monolithic group. So whenever they were saying deaf people need access, not all deaf people sign. And we don't like it when you present us as a monolithic group where all deaf people need access. What we've been asking for is fucking caption your shit. So just caption your shit. And so then it's talking about ignoring the social and cultural aspects of ASL, and that's exactly what I saw in that video. There was no social and cultural aspects in deafness, and you cannot just teach any sign without touching on that, because then you're teaching it out of context, and when that happens, harm is spread and normalized. They did not teach any grammar, syntax, cultural nuances, nada. But they don't understand the cultural nuances because it's not their fucking culture. But the grammar and syntax even, damn. Okay, and profiting off the deaf community. I honestly consider building any platform or form of clout a form of that and exploitation. It just really sits me the wrong way and bothers me. So, in terms of cultural appropriation, just keep in mind with definitions, it happens when members of a majority group take cultural elements from an oppressed group in an exploitative way. And so that is what I'm talking about here, and that includes our language, which includes deafness. And so we would have to not continue to be oppressed for the language for it to be okay. But in today's reality, while we still are, one day I hope it's not harmful, but we're not there yet, and that's the thing. And there is an accurate way, to show your own journey with sign language, but you just can't speak for us or teach it. No. So those are the two things I have a problem with. And because it's seen as trendy, more and more hearing people are trying to use sign language or quote unquote teach it. And because they are doing that, they are able to get more interaction with the algorithm. The algorithm definitely favors hearing people more than deaf people. And so that's another issue that we've been having. And so, if you want to platform deaf people, collaborate with deaf people, it's a great way to get involved and show your deaf journey within the deaf community. That's a great way, to do online in order to guide other people on a deaf journey as well. But to act like you're the spokesperson for deafness or deaf access, or to do so in a way that kind of pats yourself on the back, I think is extremely harmful. It just, for me, reeks of saviorism and performative allyship, particularly when I feel like you're kind of weaponizing and utilizing two different forms of genocide in order to promote yourself. But that's my opinion. And I also felt like you hearsplained, and, it was just extremely uncomfortable. And so people have their native language or their L1 as well as the next language they learn, perhaps, which would be an L2. And it could take up to 10 years, to become an expert signer. And so that's what I'm saying. A lot of people who are novice signers have a misperception of signing proficiency between their native tongue and everything. And I feel like that's why perhaps they think they're qualified to teach. I don't think they have an accurate understanding of their own knowledge of these issues. And for me, that's really why it's important to just, uplift the voices of people who know about these things. Don't act like you know when you don't. And it's okay to not know what you don't do or don't know, but if it doesn't affect you, and people are marginalized, and you're part of the oppressive group in that scenario, it's better to just let people speak for themselves, repost what they're saying, duet what they're saying, share what they're saying, but don't build your own platform off of it. Don't act like you're the source material for it when you're not. And so, and also the issue with normalizing the idea of you as a hearing person teaching online is it would set precedence or give credence to the idea of other people thinking it's okay for them to do it. And we're considered gatekeeping for asking you just to not appropriate a culture and teach correctly. You know what I'm saying? Because it's our communication tool that we need. You have spoken language. You can still hear. I can't. And so it's problem. So you need to learn from deaf people only. Because hearing people, generalizing, they don't know. So, my understanding also is I put a lot of time into trying to, educate the people in the comment section, but I just kind of feel like she was siding with people who were discriminating against me, which I felt like is them also liking and perpetuating discrimination and not enacting a safe space for deaf people. And I felt like they were hearsplaining against me, and they told me. And hearsplaining, by the way, is when you act like you know more than a deaf person on anything, really, but particularly on deaf issues. The take forms, like assuming that the deaf person has not understood, not trusting the deaf experience, minimizing deaf knowledge, believing that you're able to understand better, or claiming to have sufficient knowledge to voice your opinion on matters specific to the deaf community, such as sign language. Alright, so there's a flowchart hosted by CB Linguistic Services on Am I Hearsplaining? I highly recommend, go look at that flowchart. It's a great thing to keep in mind to know whether or not what you're saying is appropriate. So, Ablesplaining is when a non-disabled person condescendingly explains disability, and so Ablesplaining, hearsplaining is a form of Ablesplaining, specific to the deaf community. And it's a form of autism. And autism is bias or discrimination against people who can't hear, have difficulty hearing, or prejudice or hostility against them. And I feel a hearing person trying to teach sign language is biased because you're not deaf. So anything you teach is your own bias about us. It's not an accurate representation because you can't accurately represent something you don't know or have a lived experience about, because you don't have lived experience as a deaf person. So yeah, and so again, I've repeated this, say it a million times. The accurate way to utilize sign language is to include deaf people. And we in ASL also, we know that you're going to make mistakes, but we don't expect, but it's when deaf people correct a hearing person on anything, they never just take us at face value or believe us. It's always a struggle, and I say never, I am exaggerating when I say never. I've actually got examples of hearing people who do a great job of learning. Some get there, they get there eventually, they don't do a good job at first, they get there eventually, and some, they just piss me the fuck off, you know what I'm saying? But it's how you respond that indicates your character. And the whole thing also is when it's a dominant group taking from a minority or a marginalized group with no clear benefit to them. And when you're teaching science to feel like you're advocating when we don't have access, that's why it feels like there's no benefit, because what you taught does not give us access. And it's culturally appropriation. It's harming us. So yeah, that's my issue. I have a lot of issues with it. I could go all day. I'm trying to make a short video, but I'm already at an hour, I think. I'll try to cut some stuff out. I don't know. So yeah, And it's so hard for deaf people to get represented in like work. Hearing people are more likely to get jobs than we are. We've already discussed all of this. And then there's the medical and pathological view of deafness versus the cultural model that's also at stake. And the medical view is also more of a reflection, like within the laws, they often support more of the medical view than the cultural, even though they're supposed to protect us culturally. And that all stems from the Eugenics against us by Alexander Graham Bell, actually. Well, even more, but in terms of the spread and the normalization of it and how it was popularized was through BTV. And I feel comfortable saying that. And from there, it became like where, particularly in the first half of the 20th century, which is the 1900s, it was all about making, deaf children as hearing as possible. And oralizing, like no signing. And so that's part of why it's so like harmful for hearing people to think they can use our culture while we can't. Like what? Like have some respect. That's all I ask. Have some respect. And I don't feel that MernieAnne respected me or deaf people in general. I can say how I feel about my experience with her, with them. So, So the dude, Alexander Graham Bell, actually he got grants about, eugenics, and he used that money to promote more oralism and to do more harmful shit. And, it still impacts our culture today. And so that's part of why I'm mad, because it's like, do you not care? It feels like you don't understand the abuse we've gone through. So they compared us to animals and domestic breeding, and they started talking about like human genetics, and they're saying things like, that opposite. They're saying some misogynistic stuff too, like strong, vigorous, robust men feel a tenderness for weak, delicate, and fragile women, and things like that. And that's all by Alexander Graham Bell. So everybody's all like, Alexander Graham Bell, Jonathan, fuck me. This is for educational purposes. You know what I mean? But like, dude. And then he was basically talking about how we cannot control the marriages of men as we can the breeding of animals, and at first sight there seems to be no way of ascertaining how far human beings are susceptible of variation by selection. But then he keeps saying, such a conclusion, however, would be incorrect, and I desire to direct attention to the fact that in this country deaf marry deaf. So you see how gaslit I feel with his stupid ass speech he gave in 1991. So this was published in 1883. Then 8 years later, in 1991, he was all like, I didn't say any of that. I don't know why you think this way. Like, y'all have this in your head. The gaslighting is real, and that's how I felt in this comment section. And at first I tried to be so nice. Like, day one, I was like, trying so hard to educate and inform. I was like, look, hey, dude, but fuck shit, okay? Damn, like, come on, shit, fuck. You know what I mean? Like, relax. So, you know what I feel like? Jay and Silent Bob. Fuck. And then he said, to what extent is the human race susceptible of variation by selection? he keeps saying shit like that. And the chapters, I'm not going into all of these chapters because this is like a 100-page document. You read all the appendices. It's not exactly 100 pages, but it's close. But the 6 chapters are called Upon the Materials for the Formation of the Variety of the Human Race at Present Existing in America, Marriages of the Deaf, Deaf-mute Offspring of Deaf-mute Marriages, Families of Deaf-mutes, Upon the Growth of the Deaf-mute Population, Upon the Causes that Determine the Selection of the Deaf by the Deaf in Marriage. So, you can see why just the chapters alone are like, what the shit, man? So, he keeps calling us deaf and dumb and deaf and mute, and that's all considered discrimination, by the way. Like, if you call a deaf person either one of those things and you get punched in the face, I'm gonna laugh. That is not verbal or harassment. That is, a funny idea to me. But one of the things he noticed, was that we shared a lot of common ancestry, that deafness could be genetic. And he was like literally going through and counting all the names and stuff. And he kept talking about he was literally saying, it will thus be seen that we have abundant materials in the U.S. for the formation of a deaf variety of the human race by selection and marriage. So remember 1991, he said, I never said nothing about your being your own race. Where the fuck did you get that idea from? Look at this shit. Alright? Okay. And then, he was talking about, like, how deaf can often marry deaf, and he thought this was a reason for deafness to continue. And then he was citing this other crazy-ass eugenicist. And yes, I got to take the time to read this because it's just bad. But he said, regarding intermarriage, it is well-known fact that among domestic animals, certain unusual variations of form or color which sometimes occur among their offspring may, by careful selection of others similar and by a continued breeding of like with like, be rendered permanent so as to constitute a distinct variety. The same course adopted and pursued in the human race would undoubtedly lead to the same result. He concluded with the remark that every consideration of philanthropy as well as the interests of congenitally deaf persons themselves should induce their teachers and friends to urge upon them the impropriety of the intermarriage. So while ABD writing this document about how he wants to ban deaf marriage, until deaf people, stop deaf people from procreating because he doesn't want the deaf human race to exist, he includes this quote. And then he's all talking about how he never said nothing about this shit. You know where we got this idea? He was like, an idea has gone forth in the deaf community, but I never said or done any of that. Like, oh my god, dude, I can go on about this. And so, yeah. That's part of why all of this is so harmful, because we, in a lot of ways, never recover from this history. We're still experiencing these forms of oppression. And we're still perceived, like people still think like they analyze us and that they know more than us about us. And it leads to shit and normalizing stuff like this. Even if you have like good intentions or whatever, you think you're doing well, but you're not. And so he wrote about ideas he had about trying to separate. He had really stupid ideas. Some of the ideas he actually had were accurate for isolating deaf people, and some of it was ridiculous. Like, he was trying to talk about, like preventing us from having access to newspapers and social organizations and education to prevent us from being married, because if our ability to connect with each other is part of why we're meeting each other and marrying. And then he said, he thinks misinformation should be spread about us so that way people would avoid and fear us, and things like that. Like, he was a fucked up dude. And he literally said, I think we all will agree that the evidence shows a tendency to the formation of a deaf variety of the human race in America. We don't all agree, asshole. And then he says, what remedial measures can be taken? And again, this is not really or harassment purposes, this guy is no longer living. But remedial measures can be taken to lessen or check this tendency. We shall consider the subject under two heads: repressive and preventative measures. And repressive measures, he's talking about legislative impact. So he said in his 1991 speech, again, I never said nothing about no deaf law. Where'd you get that idea? I said nothing about marriage law. Where'd you get that idea? Oh, I don't know. Maybe repressive marriage of your memoir? What? So, hearing people don't really like to acknowledge the harm they cause to deaf people. They prefer to treat us like we're too stupid to realize, to understand what they're saying to us, but we're not. We know exactly what the fuck you said, bitch, and we're mad at you for it. So, just putting that out there. Yeah. And then in preventative marriage, he literally said, in our search for such measures, we should be guided by the following principle. Determine the causes that promote intermarriage among the deaf, and he said, and dumb, I hate that, and remove them. And that's another form. And then he also mentioned segregation. So, putting that out there. He was also saying the teachers of deaf people, need to be avoided. And he was talking about not using sign language, and he mentioning the formation of a deaf variety of the human race. Like, it's ridiculous. So, with that being said, there is scientific evidence that with either use different neural pathways and engaging in our different language structures between sign language and verbal language. So that is a reason why it can take longer, for hearing people who are oralized, or even deaf people who are oralized compared to a native signer, to learn sign language. It takes years for your brain to be able to process that information. So for people to think they're going to learn some signs and then be able to communicate fluently in sign language immediately, it's just really infantilizing sign language. And it's also like there's like a rubric to American Sign Language, like proficiency. Like, we're not judging you. We have a criteria of what it takes to be fluent in sign. And so you just don't want to misrepresent yourself. And it takes years and years and years to be able to properly, communicate. So, there was one person that, there were some people who are like, I look forward to watching content to me whenever I was explaining all of this, putting all this work into explaining the issues I had. And I felt like, so there are some examples of solidarity where people are saying, I look forward to that, I support you, thank you for telling me, things like that. Though, when that's your initial response, that's a great example of solidarity. If maybe you need help getting there, I would say, like me, I need work in my decolonizing, maybe they do too. But when people are telling me, how does it hurt to be understood about everything I've just explained, where this person isn't helping us be understood, they're using our language for clout. And so I explained to this person everything I've been talking about with you guys now about cultural appropriation, representation, how we learn sign. I put so much work into explaining this to this person because I couldn't do a video because I don't want to take my page off private, so I couldn't do like a video reply to them. So I typed it all out. I didn't say anything rude. I just literally explained deaf history, deaf oppression, cultural appropriation, why this is harmful, how it hurts deaf people, that this was not gatekeeping, which is the comment that they liked, which I told them I see you like that comment. That pissed me off. That's a form of dismissing me. You know what I'm saying? And I was telling them like there's proper ways, and then he was like, and then I didn't say one rude thing to them. And he said, I feel like I just got told. I don't know why I said he. I don't know their gender. But they said, I feel like I just got told that's what intended for listeners to feel, so shut down. And I never said one thing to shut them down. I literally put so much work into explaining history to them. And I really felt devalued by them. I felt like they were devaluing my labor. And he was telling me, and you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Well, how is me telling you the history of deaf oppression vinegar? You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that's extremely dismissive. Like, deaf history isn't happy. It's not sweet. Hearing people oppress us, and me discussing that isn't vinegar. It's like, I basically, he told them they were discriminating, and these were the comments too. Like, with you, whenever I didn't get it screenshot with the likes, but when I was going back, like, these are the types of comments that this interpreter was liking, and it pissed me off so much, because if you want to create a safe space for deaf people and you care about deaf access, that's not what you should be tolerating in your comment section. And so I have work to do in my decolonizing journey and how I respond. I can be impulsive, and so one of the things, you know, that I'm bringing my awareness to, my responses, is like, after I had put in so much work, I put over 30 comments into trying so hard to explain this information to this dude in a way where, like, I thought, like, only sticking to deaf oppression, deaf issues, and deaf facts, and not trying to bring any other experience but my own experience into it. They were still getting dismissed and gaslit. And so one of the things I said was, you know, that this was harder than convincing Zionists that Palestine is experiencing genocide. And I, in hindsight, in reflection, don't like that I said that. And I know I can be problematic. And one of the things that I will do is like, if I can't feel like I can explain my own, or if I feel like I'm trying to explain my own experience and someone isn't getting it, I will try to compare it to something else. But I shouldn't be comparing it to experiences in regards to marginalization of experiences I don't experience. You know what I'm saying? I think that is something harmful that I do, and I recognize that it's something that I've done. And I've done it against other scenarios as well. That's just one example that I think I could point out. And I had these types of conversations with several people in this comment section. And a lot of the people, you know, I don't remember the exact number, but let's just guesstimate here. About a dozen or so people were people who commented on my initial comments, and they were not people that I reached out to. So there weren't people that, like, but then that was like the next day. Then the next day after that, like, I got really upset. I was literally ended up like going on other people's comments. And so just putting it out there, you gotta care about our oppression. You know, I was being told, like, I have a brother with CI, any objections? Like, somebody said that to me. I felt like that was gaslighting, that was tokenizing their relationships. Like, you know, there is a history about forced use of CIs that needs to be discussed, but that's neither here nor there. Having a CI in general isn't necessarily problematic if you want one. But it still doesn't make you any less deaf. But tokenizing your relationships, like, what? And I don't even know what having a CI has to do with this conversation. I'm not hearing it. Like, like, so what, bitch? Just kidding. But are you deaf? So what? Like, you still don't know what it's like. You still don't have a lived experience to speak on this. You still don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Putting that out there. My brothers and sisters don't know what the fuck they're talking about deafness. I would be like, fuck them. They suck dick anyway. Like, a lot of deaf people don't talk to our hearing family because of shit like this. And they were trying to act like just because I'm calling out some discrimination against deafness that I'm against supporting the other genocide happening in, like, Palestine or Congo or Sudan. But that's not true. And then they said that they have so much white woman hearing privilege, it sickens me. Like, what? It was so weird. It was such a weird statement to say to me. I have a lot of things, and they just piss me off for so many reasons. I'm against tokenizing, and, you know, by the way, like I discussed, like it is definitely cultural appropriation for hearing people to teach that language, because we are still oppressed for it. And for you to say, okay, well, we're going to use your language and your culture to promote ourselves and get our own freedom, but you still can't have it. You still don't have it, and we're not going to do what you asked for your own access. We're going to tell you what we think is accessible for you so we can benefit off your culture. It's extremely gaslighting. And this was after I had already put so much labor into trying to do free education. I got to the point where I'm like, you are alarming. If you reflect on your stuff, like I just got, like there are things that I could have done better, but there's also like I think you can maybe understand how I got there. Like if I was ready to be like, fuck you guys, but I didn't say that shit to them. But this is not for bullying or harassment, this is for educational purposes only. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I was discussing with them, like, y'all need to understand that they're exploiting deaf trauma in order to applaud yourself on the back. It comes off as inspiration porn. And I didn't include a source for inspiration porn in here, but inspiration porn in general is whenever you act like a deaf person's ability to, or any person with a disability, ability to do a basic thing is some amazing feat, or it can also be when you act like you're some amazing person for giving them basic access. It could tie into saviorism as well. It just really felt harmful to me when they said, I understand your point, but start out with that. You're making it seem like learning sign language was a problem. I never said learning sign language is a problem. I only ever talked about hearing people teaching sign language. And if that's what you get from it, that's your own bias. That's you telling on yourself, because I never said that. So for you to take that from what I said to me bothered the shit out of me. So, I don't know. I'm kind of like overhearing people lately. And, a problematic example also, like, of how hearing people will get published speaking on deaf issues. So that's another thing. When you're looking up things, you gotta see if it's from a hearing or from a deaf perspective. There are some hearing allies out there. I don't even like the word ally. I feel like it's like the name people use to feel entitled to discriminate against people still. But let's say people standing in solidarity. There are people standing in solidarity with deafness online that aren't necessarily deaf, but do have good deaf information or deaf-friendly information. But for the most part, you should really be making sure it's a deaf person. Here's the thing, because of our oppression, not all deaf people have had access, so there are hearing people who are able to simply produce more content on deafness. So that's why there's more, and that's another inequity, because most content online is produced by hearing people on deafness. So that's why we need more deaf representation. And what we need is less hearing people to speak over us, to let us deaf people get the platform to speak. And there is going to be less content that way because we're not as many people as you, but there will be more accurate representation. And it will be less work for us to do. So one lady named Katherine Timpf posted an article, and in it she was talking about, if you're concerned about autism, then you should be delighted that people have chosen to devote themselves to helping deaf people. Speaking about hearing people teaching sign language. And I know they're not deaf because in a tweet they said, I'm basically deaf already, too many punk shows in high school. And that kind of feels like you're dismissing and demeaning deafness. I mean, it just really bothered me. So they were talking about how it's called, like, hearing people getting involved in something that helps the deaf community is concerning cultural appropriation, oppression, ableism, and autism, dismissing deaf people. But here's the thing, you're not helping us. You can't just decide what is helping us. You don't know what is helping us. So you're just dismissing us when we're telling you you're not helping us and you're admitting it. And then they were talking about, well, it's true that hearing people are making money, but they're not rich. But we are underemployed. There's huge wage gaps. It's not about necessarily getting rich. It's about survival. It's about basic access. So any form of profiting is problematic. And the fact that you're more focused on whether or not someone's a millionaire, they're not millionaires, but people in good teaching positions can make $50,000, $100,000 a year with sign language, interpreting, all of that. Like, it's still good money. It can be good money. So, that's a misrepresentation. And then they were saying that we were discouraging hearing people, which is stupid to me, and that this was for our own benefit. But it's not for our benefit. You're trying to dismiss us when we tell you what is or isn't for our benefit. You can't just decide what is for our benefit. That is hearsplaining. That's acting like we don't know what is best for ourselves when we do. And autonomy is what's most important. And then they were saying, but apparently I was wrong, is how they ended the article. That is the one fucking thing you said right. You are wrong, bitch. There are additional sources that I haven't covered before in my video. Some of the other sources I've shown before in here, I did cover before. But on my website, if you go deaftalk.com/resources, if you're on mobile, on the things, there's going to be a button that says, I think it says show more, view more. So you have to click that button to see this. There's a link called Deafness from Deaf People. It's a resource compilation. And then in that compilation, you can learn ASL. We've got ASL resources, common online dictionaries, reader spelling practice, glossing and lexicalization, ASL STEM content, I have a deaf blog, ASL deaf groups you can join on Facebook. And in these groups, there are groups to not only learn about the deaf perspective, but also you can request at any time how to learn how to sign something. And we got deaf Facebook pages, deaf Instagram pages, and this was updated before I got into TikTok, but there's that too. Pages of deaf allies, ASL deaf filmography, and then a reading list, So there's information out there if you choose to go find it. So there is a blog on my site called People Who Hear But Don't Listen. It was written by Leonie Hawley, and this person is all the way on the other side of the road in the UK, and they're like, I think maybe 8-ish, between 5 and 10 years younger than me. I forgot. Time is relevant, things like that. But they wrote about how they felt dismissed. They wrote about the whole history of sign language. It's a great blog on my website for anybody to go check out to learn more about deafness. And it's basically about how we've been dismissed by hearing people, about how the whole history is discussing about how we've been punished for sign, how we haven't had access to sign language, how we've been dismissed, and the history of how we have had our culture stripped from us, and why we are facing cultural eradication, and the harm that hearing people push on us whenever they speak over us or for us. And it also speaks to, the medical perspective, the deaf cultural perspective, and cultural assimilation. And so if you want to learn more about anything that I've been talking about, this one is a great one that kind of really summarizes everything, because all of the other sources I've talked about are very specific to one aspect of everything you've talked about, but this post happens to be a pretty good recap of almost everything. Now, about 90% of deaf people are born hearing parents. Only 22% of hearing parents with deaf children learn sign language. Keep that in mind. So we're not getting access to our language, but you want to profit off of it and call it benefiting us? Okay. Or get clout off of it or anything. You know what I'm saying? So, the way AI can boost your algorithm, the reason Caption can boost your SEO is because of how the algorithm works, okay? Now, this Amber script resource I have, it's a good resource on learning more about subtitles and captions and SEO, but they do use the term hearing impaired in there, and that is considered ableism and autism. That's a slur. We just consider ourselves deaf and or hard of hearing. Subtitles are what impact SEO because they're reading that for keywords. Our machine learning artificial intelligence doesn't have time to watch the material in all video. It scans and scans. It kind of uses an algorithm, like a machine learning algorithm, to kind of in a way do like a control F for specific keywords, and it skims and scans your content and your subtitles in order to do so. And so whenever you have subtitles, particularly, that's what's going to influence. If you have a subtitle that says Palestine, that is going to negatively influence the algorithm. The best thing you can do is add in some underscores, like some blanks, change that word, things like that. Regardless of if you use sign language or not, we've already addressed how the machines can recognize that. And again, if you're doing like TikTok lives, and you drink too much alcohol, it's gonna flag your live, things like that. Like, they can tell what the fuck you're doing. Why don't you think they know what you're signing? They know when you use the middle finger. But yeah, so because if you want to learn more about SEO, that's just an entirely different thing. But when you understand more about SEO, you know more about the way the bots skim and scan, basically. And the more research you do on the way the bots read the keywords, the better you can not only understand why they were wrong when they're talking about this information because they're adding captions still, but also, the way they were speaking about how it interprets information, but also about how it can give access to deaf people and how to get yourself found online. Because if your whole thing is, if the whole reason you're excusing appropriating deaf culture is because you're not getting found in the algorithm, well, this is me telling you how to fix that. I'm offering a solution to your problem. So this is my thing. I'm giving solutions to you. Alright. So, the captions provide the textual content for the search engine indexing. So it's reading your text. It's reading the captions. And that's literally part of how the algorithm works. So just keep that in mind. And this is connected to things such as relevance with keywords and the hashtag that give the context, improve the context, and it can improve its visibility as well as hinder it. Artificial intelligence for sign language is a thing. It exists. It's out there. It's improving. There's more technologies advancing in the field. So performative activism is when you're trying to increase your social capital rather than have a devotion to a cause. And when you want people to let it be known you're not discriminating, but you're not trying to change the structures. And that's why I have a problem with a lot of people in the comment section and with MernieAnne83 on TikTok in that video that we've been discussing so far. And tokenism, it can be a couple of things. It could be when you seem to support or help a group of people that are treated unfairly, but you're not trying to make changes in a lasting way. And it can also be when you take a relationship and you try to act like your association with that relationship negates your harm or negativity. So there are a lot of discussion on the comments. I left 1 to 2 days later, and I got extremely upset at this point, and it really just got worse. But there are some people who, were there for support, and some people who were just arguing with me the whole time, and then it eventually got there. But when you look at some of the things and the way that MernieAnne83 was trying to speak as if they were some form of authority on the subject was just really upsetting me. They're trying to act like ignorance excuses it, but it doesn't. Me just directly calling out the harm of it isn't an insult. It's me pointing out the harm of it. If you feel insulted by me talking about the harm of your actions, then reflect on that, okay? But people are talking about how excited they were for them to talk about decolonize, and if you notice, a lot of the comments are really kissing their ass, talking about how great of a signer they are, asking them to teach her different stuff, asking her to teach them different, I can't use my right words, but all of these things, they were denying that cultural appropriation is discrimination. They were denying that appropriation exists, and this is the type of environment and comment section that they were cultivating. And I don't know if it was for views, if that's what they believe, or what, but yeah. So there are all of these people thanking her and basically telling her how great they are, and they're trying to answer questions about how to sign, and it just kind of upset me because I felt like they were not listening to deaf perspectives. I felt like they were just arguing with me, and there are some people who were genuinely asking questions and they just wanted to understand and do better. They just didn't understand that first, But then other people, I just felt like they were pretty ignorant, or that they were just, really kissing her ass, like I've been saying. But it's always harmful, and people were asking me for a lot of deaf labor. I don't want to keep repeating myself, but like I've been saying, the reason it doesn't help you to learn a few things about Palestine in sign language, if you're not already if you, and this is a key word here, if you're not already learning fully how to communicate inside, is because you're not learning how to fully communicate inside, and it does not help deaf people because you're not communicating with us. You're just using our culture for your own sense of social activism, which is harmful. And you should always be learning from a deaf person because it's cultural appropriation for hearing people to teach them because they're not qualified to speak on this. So, you know, it's always going to be harmful. And I just felt like when you look at all of the hearing people, like it looks like it's all hearing people to me because you look at the profiles and then you can tell. Like when they're not captioning anything, you know they're not deaf. Like when they're not, like, not all deaf people make their whole life about them being deaf because we're our own beings and we like to discuss everything. But like, you know, if you're not making it known that you're deaf and you're speaking over deaf people and these issues, it's harmful. But yeah. And then when I was like literally trying to so hard to just educate people, they're like, why are you coming for me? I'm not coming for you. I'm trying to fucking tell you what you're doing is harmful. And if I end up getting emotional, it's because I've been gaslit so much for so long, my whole life. And, you know, it's really hard to speak about harm caused to you and be nice about it. And this one dude was really fucking arguing with me, like trying to act like I don't know what I'm talking about or like that I'm discriminating. And he was trying to say that baby sign language was different from ASL, or, you know, there can be baby sign language for like any sign language, like BSL, for example. And I'm like, no, a baby sign language is when you infantilize American sign language and then profit off of it. Like, dude, there's just so much to, like, and like this guy was arguing with me so much about this shit. And that's why it's so harmful, because they're normalizing the misrepresentation. But this other person was like, I don't know what the fuck their problem was because you're clear as shit. So this other person was like a good advocate to me. Like, there were a few people in MernieAnne83's comment sections that I felt like did a really good job of standing in solidarity with me, but most of those people, they suck ass. I'm just gonna be straight up, and this is not bullying or harassment. This is for educational purposes only. It sucks ass to be discriminated against, and I felt they were discriminating against me, and that is what it is. As I said, when I got to, after I spent so much effort, it doesn't excuse it. It's just where my mind was and what I'm working on. When I got to where I was like so upset with these guys that I was kind of started comparing it to other social issues, I think I could be problematic. Or when I got to where, like, you know, they'll say something to me and then I'll flip it when I argue back with them or something, I think that can be problematic. But, you know, like, I am in my own decolonizing journey. I know I'm not great, but I can still be impacted by these issues, and I do think they impact all deaf people, and so all deaf community. That's why I'm talking about this. Like, would you, like, if you care, if you watch like this far, I think, you know, you care. So, and I appreciate you if you're still here. Thank you. But yeah, so I've been like dealing with, you know, just like a lot in my head about this whole experience, because I just kind of feel like, how are you gonna call yourself an interpreter and try and speak for deaf people, but then allow hearing people to talk to deaf person like this? To me, it's just oppressive. Some people, they eventually got it, some did not. Some of these people, you know, we're all at different stages in our lives. So, like, there's some commentary. I know I'm repetitive, but we're wrapping up now, I think. So there was some commentary in the video after engaging with the comments in the post. This is 2 days later. And I had already asked her, I think at least once, maybe twice, but at least once before, to please delete the video. And it was still up 2 days later. And I was basically like, this post doesn't provide deaf access and doesn't give update on Palestine. That's why I call it cultural appropriation and genocide for clout and performative activism. Claiming this post is deaf access is harmful misinformation against deaf community and perpetuates the idea that oppressing us is good. It does. I said this post is taken away from deaf access on the idea that denying deaf autonomy is access for deaf because it disregards deaf perspective. in the comments. That's how I felt. It is harmful because it normalizes other people doing this, gaslighting a deaf person and excluding our culture from views. It is very harmful for hearing to try and represent deaf access and teach ASL this way. Oh, please reconsider your autism and ableism and delete. So, a few days later, I was tagged in a video. We're gonna watch this video. Okay, so yes, go find interpreters can be good for supporting deaf community for sure, and immersing yourself in practicing, learning, and seeing deaf signs, sure, but you really need to go follow deaf people. That's the wrong directive for deaf access. And if you want to learn signs, hearing people are not qualified to teach that. So you gotta learn from deaf people. So that's wrong.
Because this app knows what you say, it knows what you type. That's easy.
Yeah, and keep in mind, it knows what you type. You admit that.
You know what's not easy? Figuring out what him.
You know what's not easy? Being deaf, bitch. So it's actually not that hard to figure out what hands are doing in a video, and I've already shown the evidence for that. We've already discussed that.
Hands are doing it in a video. Machines haven't figured that out yet.
Yes, they have. Did you not have an Xbox Connect? The fuck is wrong with you?
You're really far away from that.
They're not. They're really not. They're really. What the? Where have you been? That's fine.
Take it from somebody who's actually in a business where we have to figure out how to screen.
This is your business. This is your work. This is not your work. I'm sorry. No, dude. How are you not more up to date on this info?
We're trying to use the existing tools on the market for that. They're not good.
Okay, you're right about they're not good. They exist, and they're not that bad. They're not that bad. Come on, go connect with deaf people if you need help. Just say that. Just say you don't have experience with this part yet. Just say that.
Image moderation is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, hard, not impossible.
So go learn some signs.
Go learn signs from deaf people because we are still oppressed.
Because these guys.
And that's why, like, I have a problem, like, you tagging hearing interpreters. What? What are they gonna teach you about sign language? Nothing. Crap. And then these guys, when they use this sign, this is really close to Jewish for me. I just prefer like the sign where you go like I or like something, I don't know, maybe, but wow. Yeah, I just, so you don't get confused.
Can't win. We won't let them.
It's fucking weird. So you're against some genocide, you just don't care about deaf genocide. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. So I said I was tagged in her comment. Oopsie, let's go back. I was tagged in their comment. And I said I'm against this because interpreters should not be teaching sign, only deaf people, because this is cultural appropriation and deaf oppression. And I said I'm working on a video to explain why this is so harmful. But it's gonna take some time, but it's on the way. And I said, but this OP and hearing people teaching sign are harmful to deaf people But then I said free Palestine though. And the caption for this video was skirt the algorithm and get that content moving. And so both of these creators are literally saying, let's use sign language. And notice they're still captioning the thing while admitting they know that the captions mean that they are not skirting the algorithm. Whew. Okay. Well, this person blocked me after those comments. I wonder why. So, in the screen, like in the comments, I was telling some people, to go look at some sources. And the Missgnomers has an amazing source about cultural appropriation, and it discusses how specifically impacts deaf community because of oralism. It also relates back into hearing privilege and how deaf people are denied for having the same opportunities and benefits. And so all of these are part of what's happening here. And so there's 4 factors that explain the seriousness of cultural appropriation. Like, how willing are you to do it? Like, are you informed? So MernieAnne83 has been informed, but they don't care. And Missgnomers, they have been informed, but they still can choose to perpetuate discrimination against deaf people instead of correcting that misinformation. They're like inequality, imbalance, impurity, all of these things. So the 4 reasons why cultural appropriation can be bothersome could be perceived as it trivializes the historical oppression of sign language. It's like, you can show your passion for sign, but you get to keep your privileges, whereas we're oppressed for it. It's when you prioritize your privilege over the feelings of deaf people. And it's when you perpetuate stereotypes of sign language. There's a pyramid of attitude towards cultural appropriation, and all of this is basically shown in the comment section of MernieAnne83's video. And I feel like, as well as with the Missgnomers video, basically though, you could be ignorant, indifferent, minimize, ridicule, hearsplain, or there could be cyber autism. So the biggest thing is with hearsplaining, that's a lot of go-to. It's a form of autism. And so that's why I was saying that I was being discriminated against, because I was, by these definitions. And there's 6 examples, but these aren't the only examples that I've shown in the video, but they talk about explaining something about the deaf community or sign language without being asked by a deaf person too, is what should be included in that idea. And MernieAnne83 and Missgnomers are both representations of that, as well as some of the many people in their comment section. And when you explain things that should be unique to deaf people, for example, about their social integration. When you're talking about deaf access, it said, let me answer questions about it, and you're not deaf, that's screaming and harmful and discrimination against us by definition. And when you try to convince a deaf person what we should like or think for, ignore feelings and life experiences, that is hearsplaining. When you condescendingly insist a deaf person is wrong. One person in MernieAnne83's comment section told me I was lying. Where is the lie? They were telling me I was lying about everything I was saying. I have sources for all of this, bitch. This is not bullying and harassment. It's for educational purposes. You support your arguments with what another deaf person has told you. That's tokenizing. You can discuss why you were educated a certain way, but you shouldn't ever tokenize a deaf person. Now, you reuse a string of somewhat convoluted academic arguments, and this can be harmful because academia is rooted in autism and ableism against us, as shown by their history. There is a flowchart about cultural appropriation that Unusual Verse published. It's amazing. I highly recommend you check it out. So we got a flowchart on Hearsplaining that we discussed earlier by CG Linguistics, and then there's a flowchart on cultural appropriation by Unusual Verse. Both of those are extremely helpful to check out if you ever have questions. Good intentions is not justification. And you need to understand, when you're participating in another culture, you have to be open to the possibility that we're going to have a different perspective than you. And I feel like all of them were trying to justify their discrimination with their good intentions. And you got to remember, intention and impact aren't the same. And impact is more important than your intention. So, one gotta think again, there's different information about what is or isn't cultural appropriation. We've discussed this, but you know, it really comes down to the act of taking or using things from a culture that is not your own, especially without showing that you understand or respect the culture. And if you don't have deaf culture, you do not understand it. And we've already discussed and shown historically how sign language is rooted in our deaf culture. And this comes into linguicism, autism, as well as ethnocentrism. We've been fighting against our oppression from autism. And, you know, we are looking into doing better with our human rights issues. There's also a thing that comes with cultural appropriation called coolism, where people think they look cool, and that's part of why they do it. Or they use the idea of allyship to kind of pass it off, you know, and neither of that is helpful. It's actually harmful. And whenever a baby sign language is a red sore thumb of cultural appropriation, is what Handspeak says, you know, because it's not baby words, it's our actual adult language, but they infantilize it and then profit off of it. And, you know, we've been underrepresented, we've been marginalized, and it's extremely problematic. And they get profits and resources and clout for our language that we just don't get. And so, you know, when you're teaching sign language, you can share your own journey, but you shouldn't be trying to represent yourself as an authority or a thought leader on deaf issues or sign language, because you're not if you don't rely on it for access. There's, you know, new ways of trying to basically get people to stop the cultural appropriation. There's been social movements had. So if you get immersed or involved in the deaf community, you're gonna be exposed to more content and more people who think on a similar mindset as what I'm explaining to you guys. Because it's really like, even if it's just clout or views, and whenever they're talking about skirting the algorithm, that's them admitting this is for clout and views. Like they don't care about deaf access, or they would just stick to captioning their shit. All we need is for you to caption their fucking shit. Because we can't get interpreters. Here's why it's so important for you to stick to captioning your shit and go interpret things that we actually need interpreted. Everybody, all these hearing people want to be like TikTok interpreters, social media interpreters. They want to be like Justina Miles at the Super Bowl or whatever. But they don't understand that we need interpreters at the hospital. We need interpreters at birth. We need interpreters in our real fucking lives, not on social media. On social media, caption your fucking shit. That's what we need. Only if it's live. If you're an interpreter, you want to provide access for deaf people, go interpret some lives. Deaf people, we face dinner table syndrome because of how many people don't know sign. And so we have our own deaf cultures too. Like, we have our own ways of interaction, our own cultural norms that may be considered rude in other cultures, but it's not in our culture because it's access. And we have different things that are considered creating a deaf-friendly environment, and how to, you know, provide a safe space for deaf people. It's all rooted in deaf culture, and the crux of that all is sign language. So for all of these reasons we discussed, I do have an unethical sign language map. And for all of these reasons that we discussed, I did ask MernieAnne83 to do this map. In this map, it's fake interpreters, Terps with limited signing skill, Terps with questionable ethics, or cloud signers who have taught ASL online by colonized U.S. state. MernieAnne83, I color-coded her as someone who is a Terp with questionable ethics, as a Terp with limited signing skill, as well as a cloud signer who has taught ASL online, based on the evidence and the reasons and the sources that I have discussed here. So this video is for educational purposes only. No bullying, harassment, or hate is intended. I'm hoping that you guys understand my own journey in decolonizing, as well as why I'm hoping to educate hearing people on these issues going forward. And if y'all need any links to go learn from deaf people, you let me know and I'll make sure you get that material. And thank you for your time today. I thought I was done, but psych, I just had a few more points that I wanted to hit on real quick with you guys. And first of all, I just wanted to notice that we do have that game, ASL game, Go Sign, that AI that I and in their help center, which is when you go on their website and you do like the chat box, it'll pull up their help center, and that'll show you some of these awesome little articles that give you more information. Now they do discuss that they try to make it accurate, but it's not always accurate. It does occasionally give incorrect answers, but it's evidence of what I've been discussing, where it's just similar to speech. It didn't start out great, but it's getting there. And they have another article, and it's literally about understanding AI generated answers, and it goes, this is just a couple of screenshots from it, but it goes into detail about how it works, so you can understand that better, the difference between sign language and content moderation. I also had discussed the definition of inspiration porn, so I just wanted to provide a source on that as well. And the source that I have is from Let's Defeat Bullying, and it's about what is inspiration porn and why is it so harmful, and it just kind of goes into detail about what I discussed earlier. And then I also had mentioned that it was hard for us to get interpreters, and that's not only because of the legal issues that we have been facing, but because there is a shortage of people who are willing to interpret for us physically in the field that we really need. And last thing, I just wanted to kind of point out in terms of sources that there is a difference between image moderation for screening visual content, what it takes for it to interpret sign language. So that person was using an experience that they had with screening visual content for moderation and comparing it to a completely different usage of the algorithms, but also keeping it in mind, they're kind of downplaying the efficiency of these machine learnings and algorithms, but there's just a lot of research that kind of will argue that they may not be correct on that perception. And so I just kind of wanted to close it out with some of this information. And I also wanted to bring it to your awareness, if you're admitting that you're using sign language because your other content is getting suppressed, and we've already discussed how using sign language itself isn't going to quote unquote skirt the algorithm any more or less than speech would, particularly when you're captioning it. Just more of it's harder for us to caption it accurately, but it's not impossible, but it's, the work is in progress. If you are using deaf-related hashtags for issues are eventually going to get suppressed even more, you're contributing to the oppression of deaf issues and our deaf suppression online. And it's a very, very harmful thing, particularly for using Palestine and you're just kind of trying to commingle that. Like, we already are suppressed and penalized for speaking on our own suppression and genocide. And so whenever you are making it so we're gonna have to fight that much harder to get visibility on our own content, it is harmful to us. And I also wanted to point out a couple of other examples with the utility of machine learnings for these types of material. You could look at reverse image search on Google, how well that works, you know what I'm saying? Or you could think about facial recognition and technology. So to dismiss the efficacy of the technology, I think, we can criticize it. There is a lot to criticize, but to dismiss the utility of it altogether, I think it's just kind of ignorant again. And I also wanted to point out, everything that we've discussed, no sé cómo se dice Palestine en español, pero todas las personas, la gente in those comments quieren aprender cómo se dice Palestine in sign language. Okay, well, what does that do? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't see you asking people who speak spoken languages how to teach you, say, Palestine in different language. Like, I can't remember how to say things in too many languages. I only can contain so much in my mind. So what is asking other people who speak other languages how to say these words going to do in activism? Like, not much, because porque yo no sé suficiente en español para comunicación about these issues. You know what the fuck I'm saying? So, no tratando hablar en español about genocide porque no sé las palabras to use. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not going to go and then act like I know more Spanish than I do and try to misrepresent it or something. Like, yo sé sentences con 3 palabras en español también, pero no quiero enseñar cómo se dice las palabras en español porque no sé suficiente español for that. You know what I mean? But like, hearing people, they learn some signs and they think they can fucking teach it, and they think, they think knowing 3 words in sign is like all they need to know to communicate, but they don't treat spoken language that way. They recognize they don't know shit about spoken language, or they get made fun of, you know what I mean? But I feel like you don't get the same blowback in spoken language when you are trying to correct someone how to speak your spoken language as you do when you're deaf and you're trying to correct a hearing person on your own sign language. And for anyone that would want to take my arguments out of context whenever I'm saying, like, okay, so you're captioning your stuff, so, since you're captioning your stuff, you're not serving the purpose you claimed you were using sign language for. That's not me saying don't caption. That is me telling you to please keep captioning. We need that for access. It's just me saying, if you're it negates your usage of sign language to hide behind your content, because besides the fact that the visual representation understands what you're doing, also if you're captioning it, it reads the captions. So I just kind of wanted to put all of that out there. And I was also kind of like playing with the words of skirting the algorithm, because to me, when you want to skirt something, that means you want to avoid it. So when they were saying skirt the algorithm, and I said, well, you are using captions, so you're not trying to skirt the algorithm, I meant, like, if you're using captions, you're still going to get in the algorithm. We've already discussed how that boosts your SEO. And if you meant avoid being penalized by the algorithm, well, if you're changing up your captions, that's already how you do it. So, you know what I'm saying? Culturally appropriating sign language isn't going to help or hurt that. You know what I'm saying? It just hurts deaf people. And then there's also a point to be made as well about why the cultural understanding is so important, because I have some deaf bluntness, or I was just very straight up, this is ableism, this is autism. I'm not going to be sweet, like, hey, please stop discriminating against me. Like, if you have a cultural understanding of deaf issues, you should understand and recognize when deaf blunt is going to come into play. It's for our access. Like, in deaf culture, it's not rude to interrupt you, to tell you when something is not accessible to us, or we don't understand what you said, or something like that. Like, it would be rude in hearing culture to do. It's not rude in deaf culture. And if you are speaking on deaf cultural issues, you should be able to adjust to a deaf cultural mindset. The fact that that itself was a hindrance is just proof you have no context on deaf culture. And so that's another reason I got extremely triggered. But yeah, I'm for real wrapping it up now. And I just want to say that now that is how the cookie crumbles. And back to you, fuckers.